conducting our focus group discussion on the topic, should Suharto be declared as a national hero in Indonesia? This discussion is based on a recent Tempo article that highlights both Suharto contributions and controversies surrounding the human rights and corruption. I will serve as your moderator today, and before we proceed, I would like to remind everyone that our goal is not to reach a definitive conclusion, but to explore multiple perspectives in a clear, respectful, and structural way. Please keep your responses concise so that all participants have the opportunity to speak. We will now begin with our first speaker.
Okay, thank you, moderator. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today's focus group discussion. In this session, we will explore the proposal to grant former President Suharto the title of National Hero, an issue that continues to spark debate across Indonesian society. To begin, I would like to provide some context and background to help frame our discussion. Suharto was Indonesia's second president and the central figure of the New Order era, serving from 1966 to 1998. Under his leadership, Indonesia experienced rapid economic development, large-scale infrastructure expansion, and relative political stability. Many supporters argue that Suharto's contribution in this area qualify him for recognition as a national hero. They highlighting achievements such as the Green Revolution in agriculture, improvement in national education, and substantial reduction in poverty during certain period of his rule. These accomplishments have set the narrative that Suharto played a critical role in modernizing Indonesia and maintaining national unity during turbulent times. However, the proposal is also deeply controversial. Suharto's regime was marked by authoritarian governance, strict control over political expression, human rights violation, and widespread corruption. Critics point to the suppression of civil liberties, the military dominant role in politics, and unresolved cases of violence, particularly the 1965–66 mass killing, the repression in East Timor, and various disappearances during the final years of his presidency. For many Indonesians, this unresolved historical world makes it difficult to accept the idea of granting Suharto a national hero status. The debate is further shaped by how different generations in Indonesia understand past, and an older generation may remember the new order as a period of order and stability, while younger Indonesians who grew up after the reform era often view Suharto's legacy through the lens of democracy and the struggle against corruption. The proposal also sparked questions about how Indonesia defends heroism. Should it emphasize contribution to national development, moral leadership, or a combination of both? And can a leader's positive achievement outweigh documented abuse of power? Today, our discussion will focus in this tension. We aim to understand how the public perceives Suharto's legacy, how historical narrative influence collective memory, and what considerations should shape decisions about granting national honors. By examining both sides of the debate, we can better appreciate the complexity of Indonesian political history and the values we believe should with the recognition of national hero. That's it, moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker 1, for providing the background and context. Now, I would like to invite Speaker 2 to present the pro perspective.
Thank you, moderator. I will focus on Suharto stability and development. During the New Order period, many people believe that Suharto successfully brought political stability after the early years of Indonesia independence. The stability provided a sense of security and created conditions that supported economic growth. In terms of development, the government implemented various programs to the 5-year development plans, resulting in significant progress in infrastructure expansion, such as roads, dams, irrigation system, as well as improvement in access to education and healthcare. Agriculture which became a national milestone. Many older generations remember the Suharto era as a time when prices were relatively stable, job opportunity were available, and daily life felt more orderly. Their direct experience with the benefit of development has shaped a positive perception of the period. Overall, the poor perspective highlighted the combination of political stability and economic made the Suharto era widely viewed as a period growth and the order of many Indonesia. From the poor perspective, granting Suharto the title of national hero does not erase historical controversy, but rather promote a more balanced appreciation of both successes and failure. Move national memory beyond a single-sided interpretation of the new order. Encourage Indonesia to recognize that nation building involves trade-off and the many other citizens experience genuine improvement during that time. This can contribute to more mature, pluralistic conversation about Indonesia past. Many Indonesia who lived through the new order remember affordable price, low inflation, reliable food, and public order. Associate the era with the economic mobility and the expanding opportunities. Feel their belief experience is often overshadowed in the modern narrative. From this standpoint, stability and development, declaring Suharto a national hero is viewed as a positive step because recognize his major role in establishing Indonesia, honor his significant contribution to Indonesia economic and infrastructure development, validate the experience of the older generation who felt the real benefit during his leadership, and encourage the national narrative that value long-term stability and consistent development. That's it.
Thank you, Speaker 2. Next, I invite Speaker 3 to continue with additional pro-arguments.
Okay. Thank you for the moderator, and thank you everyone here who already arrived in the third discussion. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I myself, as speaker number 3, will focus on the positive impact of Suharto that I think contributes to his selection as a national hero. Suharto's long-term contribution to the country from his leadership for 32 years can be seen as a great achievement for our beloved country, Indonesia. I think my first opinion we'll talk about Suharto is called the nickname of Father of Infrastructure, a name that is still intact till this day. He received that nickname because he initiated many infrastructure projects such as schools, local clinics, strategic national industry, national road, water dam in many regions in Indonesia. As mentioned by speaker number 2 about Trisalonita, his 5-year development program led to many infrastructure to be built with a focus on stability, growth, and equity in Indonesia. Then, my second opinion is that Suharto initiated an idea of opening Western culture to Indonesia. For a context, in Sukarno's regime since 1945 and 1965, but more primarily in the 1960s, Sukarno banned the Western influences in Indonesia, with such examples banning the Western culture with Western music of the Beatles and Kus Plus, a national band that have the influence of Western music. Other than that, Sukarno also withdrew Indonesia from a member of the United Nations when the United Nations declared Malaysia as an independent country. Sukarno deemed the nation as a colonizer sympathy by then. With Suharto's arrival as a president, Indonesia finally turned as a member of the United Nations on 20th of September in 1966. And since then, Indonesia has gained a lot of diplomacy with many countries. This led to many collaboration and investment to our country that we can see this benefit to our country till to this day. My third opinion is that Suharto took full support on one big program in our Indonesian history, which is the program called KB, or Program Rencana, the Family Planning Program. This program actually initiated since the 1950s, but when Suharto came around as a president, he fully supported this program. And since then, his policy is to help a planned family for Indonesian citizens. And his policy is to reduce Indonesian population growth that is very massive back in the days. And introduce contributing to reproduction education and the family, and of course they also improving family's prosperity, and of course this impact of the keluarga berencana or the family planning is can be seen now that many of education, primarily about sex education, can be acknowledged by many generations in Indonesia. And this program gained an achievement in 1989 by the United Nations. I think from my last statement is that there are still plenty of Suharto's long-term contributions to Indonesia that I cannot name all of them. I would say it's actually justified for him to be appointed as the national hero, as some public perception still thinks that Suharto era are much better than in the present days. I think he deserves to be a national hero, and I think that's all from my opinion, and thank you.
Thank you, Speaker 3. We will now move to the con side of the discussion. So I would like to invite Speaker 4 to present the concerns related to human rights issues during Suharto's leadership.
Okay, thank you, moderator. As the contra and focusing on human rights, I firmly believe that declaring Suharto as a national hero will seriously distort Indonesian commitment to human rights and democratic value. A national hero is not only judged by achievement, but by the moral standard and the represent. Honoring someone with a long, unresolved record of human rights violations send a confusing and dangerous message about the value we claim to uphold. It implies the economic progress and overshadow fundamental rights, mention the risk normalizing authoritarian behavior in the future. Recognition Suharto will also damage Indonesian human rights credibility, both domestically and internationally. His era was marked by extrajudicial killing, enforced dispersion, strict censorship, and military pressure. By elevating him to hero status, we signal that we are unwilling to confront the historical truth. This undermines global trust and contradicts our commitment to justice and accountability. Most importantly, we cannot ignore the fiction from Aceh, Papua to Timor-Leste, whose pain and struggle for justice remain unresolved. Declaring him a national hero will not only dismiss their chivalry, but also silence their demands for recognition and trust. In short, this proposal is not just historical problematic. It threatens the integrity of our democratic value, weaken our human rights narrative, and risk rewriting history in a way that harms future generations. For the reason, we strongly oppose declaring Suharto a national hero. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you, Speaker 4. Next, I invite Speaker 5 to elaborate on the criticisms surrounding corruption, KKN, and nepotism during the Suharto era.
Thank you, moderator. As a counterside focusing on corruption and KKN, I argue that declaring Suharto a national hero fundamentally contradicts the values Indonesia is trying to uphold. A national hero should represent integrity, responsibility, and dedication to the public good. But Suharto's leadership is widely associated with the opposite, an era where corruption becomes systemic and deeply embedded in the structure of government. Under his rule, corruption, collusion, and nepotism were not isolated incidents. They became the operating framework of the state. Economic privileges, business opportunities, and public resources were routinely funneled toward his family and political allies. This created a powerful patronage network that enriched a small elite while limiting opportunities for ordinary Indonesians. Honoring a figure so closely linked to the institution of KKN risks normalizing these unethical practices and sends the message that large-scale corruption can be excused if one stays in power long enough. Recognizing Suharto is also damaging Indonesia's credibility in its fight against corruption. Domestically, it contradicts the work of anti-corruption institutions that have spent decades trying to dismantle the legacy of KKN. Internationally, it signals inconsistency, as if Indonesia publicly condemns corruption In short, granting Suharto the title of national hero distorts our historical memory and undermines the ethical standards of our democracy. A hero should embody integrity and not be remembered for entrenching corruption at the highest level of government. That is it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker 5. Now I would like to invite Speaker 6 to discuss on how public perception and historical memory influence this ongoing discussion.
Alright, thank you, moderator. For my part, I'll focus on public perception and historical memory. First, public opinion on this proposal is clearly divided. Some groups highlight Suharto's contributions and to stability and economic development, and this shapes a more positive perception of his legacy. However, many other communities emphasize the documented human rights violations, restrictions on civil liberties, and corruption during his administration. These contrasting experiences create two very different versions of historical memory in society. Second, granting in a national hero title could influence how future generations remember this period. There is a concern that such recognition might overshadow or minimize the darker versions of the past, leading to an unbalanced understanding of his history. This is why many people worry about the possibility of whitewashing or oversimplifying complex historical realities. And finally, public perception is also tied, but beyond these divided reactions, it's important to remember that historical memory keeps changing. Media, education, and political narratives all shape how people view the new order, especially for younger Indonesians who didn't experience it directly. If Suharto is declared a national hero, it could strengthen nostalgic interpretation and risk overshadowing the more difficult parts of his legacy. Meanwhile, groups focuses on human rights would likely respond strongly because they see this proposal is a step that could weaken accountability. National heroes are also reflects the values of a country chooses to honor. And also, Suharto's mixed legacy makes that especially complex. Overall, this debate shows that Indonesians are still negotiating how to remember the new order. And whatever the decision is made will shape how future generations understand power, democracy, and justice. So overall, if the state appears to ignore past abuses, it may weaken confidence in the government's commitment to justice, accountability, and human rights. In ending, overall, the strong reactions we see today reflects how sensitive historical memory is, and see differently how Indonesians interpret the same chapter of history. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker 6. Finally, I invite Speaker 7 to explain the broader implications for Indonesia today if Suharto were to be declared as a national hero in Indonesia.
Okay, thank you, moderator. Thank you, all of you guys. I think you guys' statement is so insightful. I will focus on the implications for Indonesia today regarding the discussion, our discussion. Reminding when Suharto was again to propose as a national hero, Indonesia was divided. It wasn't just about the title, but about how the nation would remember its past, whether by glorifying development or by facing the shadow of human rights violation and corruption that remind me like so unresolved. This design was sparked by supporters who considered him instrumental in the development and stability of the country, while opponents highlight his track record of human rights, of course, and the violation and the corruption, collusion, and nepotism. This impact historical memory, justice for victims, democratic values, and the direction of Indonesia politics today. However, on the opposition of growing coming from various parties, and the victims, activists, academics, that cannot be separated from serious human rights violation by Soeharto. Political, to inequality, they see the hero design not simply like an hammer, but it feels like a signal that the state is willing to ignore the victims' suffering and normalize authoritarian practice of the power. So, this is just not about Soeharto alone, but this is about we and who we are as a nation, whether we dare to speak our history honestly or choose to forget for the sake of future confidence, because Indonesia future will be determined by our courage to preserve memory, demand justice, and ensure that the title of hero is truly bestowed upon those who uphold humanity, not power. So that's it, moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker 7, for your insight. I will now present a brief conclusion. Based on the perspectives shared, it is clear that the proposal to declare Soeharto as a national hero here in Indonesia carries both potential benefits and significant concerns. Though Soeharto was called as the father of infrastructures and also opens a lot of Western cultures and also other things, but heroes isn't only based on achievements but also represents integrity, credibility, and many more moral values. Unfortunately, Soeharto's historical memories has many differences. Some were contributional, while some sadly were implicated various issues that needs to be addressed. With these insights, we can see that the topic remains highly complex and sensitive for Indonesia. I could add as well that as Indonesian citizens, we should all pick our national heroes wisely. Thank you all for your participation. This concludes our focus group discussion.